I always knew my sister, Vanessa, would try to ruin my wedding. I just didn't expect her to do it so publicly, so dramatically, so her. My name is Lily Harper, and I've always been the quieter one, the one who preferred books over parties, the one who didn't care much for the spotlight. Vanessa, on the other hand, thrived on attention. She was the golden child, the one who married into wealth and never let anyone forget it. When I met Daniel, my now husband, I knew he was different. He wasn't like the men Vanessa or my parents expected me to marry. He wasn't a CEO, a lawyer, or a hedge fund manager. He was a bartender. At least, that's what everyone thought. The truth? Well, the truth was far more interesting. But we'll get to that. A bartender? Vanessa had sneered when I first told my family about him. Lily, seriously? With your education, your background, you could do so much better. That was Vanessa. Always measuring people by their job titles, their bank accounts, their social status. She'd married a tech mogul right out of college and had been living in a penthouse in Manhattan ever since. To her, the idea that her Ivy League-educated sister, would settle for someone who poured drinks for a living was nothing short of a personal insult. What she didn't know was that Daniel had a very good reason for working behind that bar. He wasn't just a bartender. He was the heir to one of the most prestigious hotel chains in the world. But we'd agreed to keep that quiet until after the wedding. Let them judge, Daniel had said, his green eyes twinkling with mischief. It'll be more fun that way. The morning of our wedding dawned bright and clear. The small, intimate chapel we'd chosen was perfect, elegant, understated, nothing like the over-the-top extravaganza Vanessa had thrown for her own wedding 5 years ago. I was in the bridal suite, my mother fussing with my veil, when Vanessa burst in. "You can't go through with this," she declared, still wearing her designer dress like armor. "Do you know what people are saying? That you've lost your mind." "The only person saying that is you, Vanessa," my mother said tiredly. She'd grown weary of Vanessa's drama over the past few months. "Mom, she's throwing her life away," Vanessa snapped. "He probably just wants her money." I couldn't help but laugh at that. My modest salary as a librarian compared to Daniel's hidden billions was almost comical. But Vanessa took my laughter as defiance. "Fine," she hissed. "Ruin your life. But don't come crying to me when you're living in some cramped apartment above a dive bar." If only she knew about the penthouse Daniel and I had already picked out, or the private beach where we'd be spending our honeymoon. But I held my tongue, remembering our agreement. The truth would come out soon enough. The ceremony began beautifully. Daniel stood at the altar, looking impossibly handsome in his tailored suit, which Vanessa had probably assumed was rented. Our closest friends and family filled the pews, though notably fewer on my side since Vanessa had convinced several relatives it wasn't worth attending. Then came the moment that would be talked about for years to come. "If anyone knows any reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace," the minister said. Vanessa stood up. "This is ridiculous," she shouted, her voice echoing through the chapel. "Lily, you're making a huge mistake. You're better than this. You're marrying a bartender, for God's sake. How pathetic can you be?" The chapel fell silent. Daniel squeezed my hand gently, and I saw the corner of his mouth twitch. "Should we tell her?" he whispered. I shook my head slightly. "Not yet." Vanessa wasn't finished. She stormed toward the altar, her expensive heels clicking against the stone floor. "Everyone here knows this is a joke," she continued. "Lily, you were supposed to be the smart one, the successful one. And now look at you, throwing it all away on some server." "Vanessa," our father warned from the front pew, but she ignored him. "When this all falls apart, don't expect any sympathy from me," she spat. "You've made your bed, probably a very cheap one, now lie in it." With that final shot, she turned and stormed out of the chapel, leaving stunned silence in her wake. The minister cleared his throat awkwardly. "Shall we continue?" I looked up at Daniel, saw the love and amusement dancing in his eyes. "Yes," I said firmly. "Let's continue." The rest of the ceremony was perfect, made even better by Vanessa's absence. As we exchanged rings, I couldn't help but think about what was coming. The reception would be at one of Daniel's family's most exclusive hotels, a place that had been mysteriously closed to the public for the day. Vanessa had no idea that her very public tantrum was about to backfire in the most spectacular way possible. And I couldn't wait to see her face when she realized just how wrong she'd been about everything. But first, we had to get through the pictures and the drive to the reception. Daniel helped me into the rented vintage Rolls-Royce, actually from his personal collection, as our guests showered us with rice. "Ready for Act 2?" he murmured in my ear. I smiled, thinking of a scene that was about to unfold at the reception. "More than ready. Do you think she'll show up?" "Oh, she'll show up," he said confidently. "People like Vanessa can't resist a chance to feel superior. She'll come just to watch what she thinks will be a cheap, embarrassing reception." He was right, of course. Vanessa might have stormed out of the ceremony, but there was no way she'd miss the chance to criticize every detail of our celebration. She had no idea she was walking into a reveal that would leave her speechless. As we drove toward the reception, I thought about how perfectly everything had played out. Vanessa's outburst, while hurtful, had only made what was coming sweeter. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about letting someone's own actions set the stage for their humiliation. The hotel loomed ahead, its elegant facade and prime location usually hosting celebrities and dignitaries. Today, it would host a revelation that would change my family dynamic forever. "Here we go," Daniel said, helping me out of the car. "Ready to show your sister who she really just insulted in front of everyone?" I smoothed my dress and took his arm. "Let's give her a show she'll never forget." The doors of the hotel swung open, and I heard the collective gasp from our arriving guests. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over marble floors and hand-painted murals. White glove servers circulated with champagne, each bottle worth more than what most people thought Daniel made in a month. "This must be a mistake," I heard someone whisper. "How could they afford this place?" Vanessa arrived fashionably late, probably expecting to find us in some budget banquet hall. She froze in the doorway, her perfectly made-up face twisted in confusion. "There's been a mix-up," she said loudly, approaching me. "This is the Grand Lux. They don't do wedding receptions. Ever." "They made an exception," Daniel said smoothly, appearing at my side. "For family." Before Vanessa could respond, an elderly man in an impeccable suit approached us. Everyone in the hospitality industry knew Edward Harrington, the patriarch of the Harrington Hotel Empire. He was notoriously private, rarely seen in public. "Daniel," he said warmly, embracing my husband. "My grandson. Finally married to his beautiful Lily." The silence in the room was deafening. Vanessa's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. "Grandson," she choked out. "What do you mean, grandson?" Edward turned to her, his eyes sharp despite his age. "And you must be the sister who caused such a scene at the chapel. Tell me, what was it you called my grandson?" Yes, some bartender." The color drained from Vanessa's face as the truth sank in. Daniel wasn't just a bartender. He was the heir to one of the largest hotel empires in the world. The Harrington Group owned hundreds of luxury establishments across the globe, along with resorts, vineyards, and real estate. I didn't know," she stammered. "Clearly," Edward said dryly. "Perhaps next time, you'll remember that true class isn't about what someone does for a living, but how they treat others." Daniel squeezed my hand as Vanessa stood there mortified. Around us, guests were beginning to whisper as they pieced together the truth. The simple wedding ceremony followed by this lavish reception. The bartender, who was actually hotel royalty. "Why didn't you tell me?" Vanessa demanded, finding her voice. "You let me believe. You let me make a fool of myself. Would it have mattered?" I asked quietly. "Would you have treated Daniel differently if you'd known who he really was?" "Because that's exactly why we didn't tell anyone. We wanted to know who our true friends were." "But I'm your sister," she protested. "Yes," I said. "Which makes your behavior even worse. You couldn't even be happy for me unless you approved of my choices, social status." Edward cleared his throat. "If you'd like to leave, no one would blame you. You've already provided enough entertainment for one day." Vanessa's face flushed deep red. She looked around the room, seeing the judgment in everyone's eyes. The same people who had witnessed her outburst at the chapel were now watching her humiliation. "I should go," she muttered. "Stay," Daniel said unexpectedly. Everyone turned to look at him.
"Stay.
Enjoy the reception. Consider it a chance to start over, to see people for who they are, not what they own or what they do for a living." I looked at my husband with pride. Even after Vanessa's awful behavior, he was showing more class than she ever had. She hesitated, then slowly nodded. I'd like that. And I owe you both an apology." "Yes, you do," Edward agreed. "But perhaps that can wait until after the first dance. I believe my grandson and his bride have waited long enough to celebrate properly." As Daniel led me to the dance floor, I caught glimpses of Vanessa's face. She stood alone, watching us beneath the chandeliers, probably calculating how many times she'd have to apologize before she could start bragging about her connection to the Harrington family. "She'll never change completely," Daniel murmured, reading my thoughts as always. "No," I agreed. "But maybe she'll think twice before judging someone based on their job again." The reception continued like a fairy tale, course after exquisite course of Harrington specialties, wine from the family's private reserve, and stories from Daniel's time working his way up through every position in the hotel. He'd insisted on starting at the bottom, Edward told our captivated guests, because he needed to understand every aspect of the business. "Most trust fund kids want to start in a corporate office," Edward said. "Not my Daniel." I watched Vanessa's face as she realized just how wrong she'd been. The bartender she dismissed had shown more work ethic and humility than her tech mogul husband ever had. As the night went on, I saw her try to approach us several times, probably to apologize or attempt damage control. But there was always someone else wanting to talk to us, to share a story or offer congratulations. Her social punishment would last a bit longer. After all, she'd spent months making me feel small. A few hours of humility wouldn't kill her. Besides, we had other things to focus on, like the honeymoon villa waiting for us on the Harrington family's private island. But that was another surprise for another day. For now, I was content to dance with my husband, surrounded by people who loved us for who we were, not what we owned. And if my sister learned something from all this, well, that was just icing on our very expensive wedding cake. The night wore on, and the reception became a whirlwind of laughter, music, and celebration. Vanessa, though visibly shaken, stayed true to her word and remained at the event. She lingered on the outskirts of the room, nursing a glass of champagne, her eyes darting nervously between the guests and me. Every so often, I'd catch her staring at Daniel as if she were seeing him for the first time. Daniel, ever the gracious host, made sure to include her in the festivities, even after everything she'd done. He approached her at one point, offering her a glass of wine from the family's private vineyard. "Vanessa," he said, his tone calm but firm, "I know tonight has been eye-opening for you. But I want you to know that Lily and I don't hold grudges. We're family, and family forgives." Vanessa looked at him, her usual confidence replaced by something softer, something almost vulnerable. "I don't deserve your kindness," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been awful to both of you." Daniel smiled gently. "Maybe, but people can change. And tonight's a good night for new beginnings." She nodded, though her eyes were filled with uncertainty. I could tell she was struggling to reconcile the man she dismissed as a bartender with the man standing before her, a man who had just proven that humility and hard work were worth more than any title or bank account. The next morning, Daniel and I left for our honeymoon. The Harrington family's private island was everything I'd imagined and more: pristine beaches, crystal-clear waters, and a villa that looked like it had been plucked straight out of a luxury travel magazine. It was the perfect escape, a chance to leave behind the drama of the wedding and focus on us. But even in paradise, I couldn't stop thinking about Vanessa. Her words at the chapel still stung, but more than that, I wondered if she'd truly learned anything from the experience. Would she change, or would she slip back into her old ways once the shock wore off? Daniel, as always, seemed to read my thoughts. You're worried about her, aren't you? He asked one evening as we sat on the beach, watching the sunset. I sighed, leaning into him. I don't know. Part of me wants to believe she's capable of change, but the other part remembers all the times she made me feel small. It's hard to let that go. He wrapped an arm around me, pulling me closer. People can surprise you. Sometimes it just takes a wake-up call. And if anyone needed one, it was Vanessa. I smiled, grateful for his optimism. You're too good for this world, you know that? He laughed, the sound warm and comforting. Nah, I'm just lucky I found someone who sees the best in me, even when I'm pretending to be a bartender. While we were away, Vanessa's life began to unravel in ways she never could have anticipated. Her husband, Marcus, the tech mogul she'd married for his wealth and status, was embroiled in a scandal. It turned out he'd been involved in illegal business practices, and the authorities were closing in. By the time Daniel and I returned from our honeymoon, Marcus's assets had been frozen, and Vanessa was facing the very real possibility of losing everything. She showed up at our penthouse one evening, her usual poise replaced by desperation. Her designer clothes were rumpled, her hair disheveled, and her eyes red from crying. "Lily," she said the moment I opened the door, "I need your help." I led her to the living room, where Daniel was working on his laptop. He looked up, concern crossing his face as he took in Vanessa's disheveled appearance. "They're taking everything," she sobbed, collapsing onto the couch. "The house, the cars. Marcus is facing jail time. I don't know what to do." Daniel and I exchanged glances. This was the moment of truth. Would we help the sister who had tried to ruin our wedding, who had only accepted us after learning about our wealth? "There's an apartment," Daniel said finally, "above one of our smaller hotels in the city. It's nothing fancy, but it's a start." Vanessa's eyes widened. "You'd do that? After how I treated you?" "On one condition," I added. "You work in the hotel. Learn the business from the ground up, just like Daniel did." She looked horrified. "You want me to work?" "Yes," Daniel said firmly. "Wait tables, clean rooms, learn to cook. Understand what it means to earn your way." Vanessa was quiet for a long time, clearly wrestling with her pride. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, I'll do it. But will you help me? Show me how." That was the moment I knew my sister might actually change. The next few months were transformative for Vanessa. She moved into the small apartment above the hotel, trading her designer clothes for sensible uniforms and her high heels for comfortable shoes. The transition wasn't easy. She cried the first time she had to clean a bathroom, broke 3 plates her first night serving, and burned herself twice while learning to cook. But she didn't quit. I watched as she slowly transformed from someone who looked down on service workers to someone who defended them. She started leaving bigger tips at other restaurants, calling out rude customers, and appreciating the complexity of work she once dismissed. 6 months into her new life, I visited her at the hotel. She was expediting orders, her hair tied back, completely focused on her task. No makeup, no pretense, just honest work. "She's doing well," Daniel said, appearing beside me. "The staff actually likes her now. Think she's learned her lesson?" I smiled. "I think she's learned several." Later that night, after her shift ended, Vanessa joined us at a corner table. She looked exhausted, but somehow more genuine than I'd ever seen her. "How would you feel about managing this place?" Daniel asked casually. Vanessa's eyes widened. "What?" "You've learned every position, earned the respect of the staff. The current manager is moving to our new location in Chicago. The job's yours if you want it." "But why?" she asked, her voice trembling. "After everything I've done?" "Because you proved us wrong," I said softly. "We thought you couldn't change, that you'd always be the person who cared more about status than substance. But look at you now." Tears filled her eyes. "I was awful to both of you. I let money and status blind me to what really matters. And now." "Now you know," Daniel prompted. "Now I know that what matters is who people are, not what they own or what they do for a living," she said, wiping her eyes. "I'm actually proud to be a server now. Proud of what I've learned, what I can do." A year later, we all gathered for a family reunion. Vanessa, now the manager of one of the Harrington hotels, arrived wearing her uniform, a far cry from the designer gowns she used to flaunt. She stood tall, her confidence no longer rooted in wealth or status, but in the hard work she'd put into rebuilding her life. As the night went on, I watched her interact with the family, her humility and newfound sense of self shining through. She even apologized to Daniel and me in front of everyone, her words sincere and heartfelt. "I owe you both more than I can ever repay," she said, her voice steady. "You showed me what true class looks like, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to live up to it." As Daniel and I walked home that night, hand in hand, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride, not just in Vanessa, but in us. We'd faced judgment, ridicule, and even sabotage, but we'd come out stronger on the other side. "Your sister finally found her way," Daniel said, squeezing my hand. "Our way," I corrected. "The hard way. The honest way." Vanessa's transformation from judgmental socialite to hardworking hotel manager was proof that people can change if given the right opportunity and motivation. And as for Daniel and me, we continued living simply, working hard, and remembering that true wealth isn't about what you have, it's about who you are and how you treat others. That's a lesson worth more than all the Harrington billions combined. The days following the family reunion were filled with a sense of quiet triumph. Vanessa's transformation had been the talk of the family, and for the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope that she and I could rebuild our relationship. But life, as it often does, had other plans. One evening, as Daniel and I were enjoying a quiet dinner at home, my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. It was unusual for her to reach out so late, and my heart skipped a beat as I read her message. "Can we talk? It's important." I showed the text to Daniel, who raised an eyebrow. "Do you think something's wrong?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I think I should hear her out." Daniel nodded.
"Go.
"I'll clean up here." I grabbed my coat and headed to Vanessa's apartment above the hotel. When she opened the door, I was struck by how different she looked. Gone were the perfectly styled hair and flawless makeup. Instead, she wore a simple sweater and jeans, her hair pulled back into a messy bun. She looked human. "Thanks for coming," she said, stepping aside to let me in. Her apartment was small but cozy, a far cry from the sprawling penthouse she'd once shared with Marcus. Photos of her time working at the hotel adorned the walls, and I couldn't help but smile at the sight of her in a chef's apron, laughing with the kitchen staff. "What's going on?" I asked, sitting down on the couch. Vanessa hesitated, twisting her hands in her lap. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began.
About everything.
"About how I treated you, how I treated Daniel, how I treated everyone really. And I realized something." I waited, giving her the space to continue. "I've spent my whole life chasing after things that don't matter," she said, her voice trembling. "Money, status, appearances. I thought they would make me happy, but they didn't. They just made me miserable. And, in the process, I hurt the people who mattered most." Tears welled up in her eyes, and for the first time in years, I saw the vulnerable side of my sister. The side she'd always hidden behind a mask of arrogance and superiority. "I'm so sorry, Lily," she whispered. "For everything. For the way I treated you at your wedding, for the way I've treated you your whole life. You didn't deserve that. You've always been the better person, and I was too blind to see it." I reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Vanessa, I forgave you a long time ago. But I'm glad you're finally seeing things for what they are. You've come so far, and I'm proud of you." She smiled through her tears. "I couldn't have done it without you and Daniel. You gave me a chance when no one else would have. You believed in me, even when I didn't deserve it." We sat there for a while, talking about everything: her work at the hotel, her plans for the future, even her regrets about Marcus. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in years, and it felt like a weight had been lifted off both of our shoulders. A few weeks later, Vanessa's newfound confidence was put to the test. The Harrington Group was opening a new luxury resort in the Caribbean, and Daniel had been tasked with overseeing the project. He decided to bring Vanessa on board as the assistant manager, giving her the opportunity to prove herself on a larger stage. "Are you sure about this?" I asked him one night as we lay in bed. "It's a big responsibility." Daniel smiled, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "I've seen how hard she's worked. She's earned this. And besides, I think it'll be good for her. A fresh start in a new place." I nodded, though I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Vanessa had come a long way, but the pressure of managing a luxury resort was a far cry from running a small hotel in the city. I worried that she might buckle under the weight of expectations. But Vanessa surprised us all. She threw herself into the project with a determination I'd never seen before. She worked long hours, learning every aspect of the resort's operations, from managing staff to overseeing guest experiences. She even took the time to learn about the local culture, ensuring that the resort would be a respectful and authentic representation of the community. The grand opening of the resort was a lavish affair, attended by celebrities, dignitaries, and members of the Harrington family. Daniel and I flew down for the event, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride as I watched Vanessa in action. She moved through the crowd with ease, her confidence radiating as she greeted guests and answered questions about the resort. At one point, she caught my eye and smiled, giving me a small wave. I waved back, my heart swelling with pride. This was the sister I'd always known she could be, strong, capable, and kind. Later that night, as the festivities wound down, Vanessa found me on the beach, where I was watching the waves crash against the shore. "Hey," she said, sitting down beside me. "Thanks for coming." "Of course," I said. "I wouldn't have missed it for the world. You've done an amazing job, Vanessa. I'm so proud of you." She smiled, her eyes shining in the moonlight. "I couldn't have done it without you and Daniel. You gave me a second chance, and I'll never forget that." We sat there in silence for a while, the sound of the waves filling the space between us. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace with my sister. The past was behind us, and the future was full of possibilities. As the months went by, Vanessa continued to thrive in her new role. The resort became one of the most sought-after destinations in the Caribbean, and Vanessa's leadership was a big part of its success. She even started dating again, this time with a focus on finding someone who valued her for who she was, not what she had. Daniel and I, meanwhile, settled into our new life as a married couple. We continued to live simply, focusing on the things that mattered most: our love for each other, our family, and our shared commitment to making a difference in the world. One evening, as we sat on the balcony of our penthouse, watching the city lights twinkle below, Daniel turned to me with a smile. "You know," he said, "I think we've done pretty well for ourselves." I laughed, leaning into him. "I think so too. And who knows? Maybe the best is yet to come." Just when we thought life couldn't get any better, we received some unexpected news. Vanessa called me one afternoon, her voice filled with excitement. "Lily, you're not going to believe this," she said. "I've been offered a position as the regional manager for the Harrington Group's Caribbean properties. It's a huge step up, and it means I'll be overseeing multiple resorts." "Vanessa, that's amazing," I exclaimed. "I'm so proud of you." "There's just one thing," she said, her tone turning serious. "I want you and Daniel to be there with me. I know it's a big ask, but I can't do this without you." I was stunned. "Vanessa, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "You've always been my rock, Lily. And I want to do this together as a family." I looked at Daniel, who had been listening in on the conversation. He smiled and nodded, his eyes filled with pride. "We'll do it," I said. "Together." And so, a new chapter began for all of us. Vanessa took on her new role with the same determination and humility that had defined her transformation. Daniel and I moved to the Caribbean, where we continued to live simply, focusing on our family and the things that mattered most. As I watched Vanessa flourish in her new role, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. She had come so far, And her journey was a testament to the power of second chances and the importance of staying true to oneself. And as for Daniel and me, we continue to live our lives with love, humility, and a deep appreciation for the things that truly mattered. Because in the end, true wealth isn't about what you have. It's about who you are and how you treat others. Moving to the Caribbean was a dream come true for Daniel and me. The warm sun, the turquoise waters, and the vibrant culture made every day feel like a vacation. But more than that, it was a chance to start fresh, not just for Vanessa, but for all of us. We settled into a cozy beachfront villa, close enough to the resorts to stay involved but far enough to maintain our privacy. Vanessa, now the regional manager, was thriving. She had fully embraced her new role, and her passion for the job was evident in everything she did. She worked tirelessly to ensure that each resort under her care was not only luxurious, but also sustainable and respectful of the local communities. Her transformation was complete, and it was inspiring to watch. One evening, as the three of us sat on the terrace of our villa, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Vanessa turned to me with a smile. "I never thought I'd say this," she began, "but I'm happier now than I've ever been. And it's all thanks to you and Daniel." I reached out and squeezed her hand. "You did the hard work, Vanessa. We just gave you the opportunity." She shook her head. "No, it was more than that. You believed in me when no one else did. You showed me what it means to be a family." Daniel, sitting beside me, smiled warmly. "Family's not about blood, Vanessa. It's about love, trust, and being there for each other. And you're a part of ours." Tears welled up in Vanessa's eyes, and for a moment, none of us spoke. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore filled the silence, a soothing reminder of the peace we'd all found. A few months later, Daniel and I received some life-changing news. I was pregnant. We'd been trying for a while, and when the doctor confirmed it, we were over the moon. We decided to keep the news to ourselves for a little while, savoring the joy of our little secret. But of course, Vanessa noticed something was different. She had always been perceptive, and one evening, as we were having dinner, she looked at me with a knowing smile. "Okay, spill," she said. "What's going on? You've been glowing all week." I glanced at Daniel, who nodded, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "We're having a baby," I said, unable to keep the smile off my face. Vanessa's eyes widened, and for a moment, she was speechless. Then, with a squeal of delight, she jumped up from her chair and pulled me into a tight hug. "I'm going to be an aunt," she exclaimed, her voice filled with joy. "This is the best news ever." From that moment on, Vanessa became even more involved in our lives. She doted on me during my pregnancy, making sure I was comfortable and well taken care of. She even started planning the baby's nursery, insisting on doing it herself as a way to thank us for everything we'd done for her. The day our daughter was born was the happiest day of our lives. We named her Sophia, after Daniel's grandmother, and she was perfect in every way. Vanessa was the first to hold her after Daniel and me, and as she cradled Sophia in her arms, tears streamed down her face. "She's beautiful," Vanessa whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "I promise I'll always be there for her, just like you were for me." And she kept that promise. Vanessa became the most devoted aunt, spending every spare moment with Sophia. She taught her how to swim in the crystal-clear waters of the Caribbean, read her bedtime stories, and even started a college fund for her. It was heartwarming to see the bond they shared, a bond that was unbreakable. Years passed, and life continued to be filled with love, laughter, and the occasional challenge. Vanessa's career flourished, and she became one of the most respected figures in the hospitality industry. But despite her success, she never lost sight of what truly mattered: family. One evening, as we celebrated Sophia's 5th birthday on the beach, Vanessa stood up to make a toast. She looked around at the small gathering of friends and family, her eyes shining with gratitude. "I've been blessed in so many ways," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "But the greatest blessing of all has been the love and support of my family. Lily, Daniel, and Sophia, you've shown me what it means to live a life of purpose, humility, and love. And for that, I'll always be grateful. She raised her glass, and we all followed suit. To family, she said, her voice breaking slightly. To second chances. And to the beautiful life we've built together. As we clinked our glasses, I felt a surge of emotion. Vanessa had come so far, and her journey was a testament to the power of love, forgiveness, and the belief that people can change. As the years went by, Daniel and I continued to live our lives with the same values that had guided us from the beginning. We taught Sophia the importance of kindness, humility, and hard work, and she grew up to be a compassionate and driven young woman. Vanessa, now a successful businesswoman and a beloved aunt, remained a constant presence in our lives. She never married, but she always said that her family was enough for her. And in many ways, she was right. We were her family, and we always would be. One day, as we sat on the beach watching Sophia play in the sand, Daniel turned to me with a smile. "We've built a good life, haven't we?" he said, his voice filled with contentment. I nodded, leaning into him. The best. And as I looked out at the horizon, watching the sun set over the ocean, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. We had faced challenges, heartache, and even betrayal, but through it all, we had remained true to ourselves and to each other. In the end, that was all that mattered.